What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lighthouse Performance. This is Hamza. Today I want to talk about training structure. And as far as the training programs I'm going to prescribe, there's two trains of thought. One is the health and fitness population, and then the athletic performance population. For the most part, there'll be a lot of similarities as far as training order and structure, but some pieces will be moved around and things like that, depending on your goals. So just starting off with like the health and fitness population, I think one overlooked aspect of training is the warm up, especially as you get older. Just for as far as injury prevention and actually performing enhancements, I guess. Proper warm up will set you up for a better training session. I like to follow the ramp protocol, which is raise the heart rate, activate and mobilize the muscles and joints that you're going to be training that day, and then potentiate those muscles and joints. So an example of that could be jumping jacks to increase that heart rate, and then doing walking lunges, world's greatest stretch, things like that to mobilize the hips. For potentiate, we'll do something like bodyweight squats or jump squats and things like that to kind of get the muscles firing. I'll talk about the performance side after. Right now, just kind of focusing on the health and fitness population. After a dynamic warm-up, we would kind of go into a little bit of a more heart rate acceleration. Again, the goal here is to get the body warm and get that heart rate pretty high, and then throughout the rest of your training, while that heart rate is up, you'll be constantly burning calories, right? So that's the goal. So after a dynamic warm-up, we'll probably have an extension of the warm-up, and it could be something like a salt bike, for 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest, doing that for 8 rounds or so, right? That's gonna get your heart rate up. You're gonna burn a little bit of calories. Now your body's nice and warm, joints are nice and lubricated. Now you're gonna finally get your training started. As far as the workout or training session itself, at the very beginning of it, it'll be your most taxing or big movements. So like, just to follow the script of this warm-up, it would be a squat or a lower body day, right? So either your squat or your deadlift in the very beginning. Depending on your training age, you would probably do that by itself, or if you're a little bit more advanced, you could do a superset. And I would like to throw in a non-competing movement so that your big movement isn't compromised, right? So I'm not gonna ask you to do heavy squats with heavy deadlifts, right? Then your squat's not gonna be as effective, or your deadlift won't even be as effective. If I was to go with the back squat, the movement I would couple that with would either be some kind of lumbar spine mobility or pull-ups to kind of promote upright torso and activate those erector spinae in your back, so that way they complement each other instead of taking away from each other. After your big movement, again, depending on your training age, your training experience, you can maybe do a secondary movement that's just as big, maybe like a RDL, which works on the long lever hamstring. And then I would couple that with like a lateral lunge or something. A lot of training is either up and down and front and back, but I think the lack of lateral movement kind of leads to instabilities, aches and pains in the hips and knees. So I like to definitely incorporate that a little bit, a couple times a week. So probably lateral lunges and RDL. And then you go into your assistance work. I think one thing specific to the assistance work is this is where you could kind of get creative with what kind of work you want to do. You're not going to spend all day in the gym, so you could either use the assistance work to improve your big lift of the day, or you could use the assistance work to work on deficiencies that you want to work on, right? If I feel like I need bigger quads, then I'll do more quad work, like leg extensions, lunges, step ups, things like that. Or if I feel like my hamstrings need some more work, I'll do a little bit more hamstring curls. We already did the RDLs that day, but things like that, and then I always like throwing some calves. I feel like those are very underrated as far as, or underprescribed in training sessions. I think they're very, very useful, and they contribute to almost every movement. And then it just kind of depends on your goals. Like if you want your butt to be bigger, you could do some glute work. If you want, like I said, the quads, hammies, wherever you want to focus on, this is where you throw it in the assistance work. And at the very end, I'd like to do some core. And if you're a weight loss or a burn fat, if that's your goal, I would at the very end do another heart rate accelerator. because now you've burned all these calories and your heart rate's been high the entire time. You got some strength work in. Now let's kind of go back to the heart rate acceleration. And this could be, you could either do the same thing again, the 20-10 with the bike, or something else, kind of keep it fresh, keep it fun for you. It could be a jump rope, something low intensity, and combine that with your core. And I think that'll be a good little balance to your training session. That's the ideal training session, right? So dynamic warm-up, using the ramp protocol, an extension of the warm-up to keep that heart rate up, then your strength piece, maybe a secondary strength piece, and then your assistance work, followed by another heart rate accelerator and some core, okay? And that's your workout for my health and fitness population. A big reason why my training bias includes resistance training is because I think it includes qualities for any kind of goal that you have. If your goal is to lose weight, if your goal is to build muscle, resistance training is your key. And I say that because if you're a weight loss client and I'm telling you to lift weights and lift heavy and things like that, a lot of people are like, oh, no, that's not what I want to do. I'm not trying to get bulky. I want to lose weight. Well, if you build muscle mass, there's this thing called a basal metabolic rate. Not to get too sciencey on you, but that your BMR is how many calories you burn in a day just by existing. So you can sit on a couch, and for me, for example, my basal metabolic rate is like 2,000, let's just say. I could sit on a couch all day, do nothing, and I'll burn 2,000 calories. So the more muscle mass that you have in your body, you burn more calories. So for my weight loss clients, or for that population rather, if your basal metabolic rate is higher, that means you burn more calories doing nothing. That way when you train and you diet, you have a little bit more leeway. You know what I mean? It's an assistance to that caloric deficit that you're trying to get to, right? So that's why I included it in both training realms. For my athletic performance population, you would follow the ramp protocol as well. But now I would probably prescribe some kind of sprint work or plyometric work in the very beginning. So if you have to sprint or if you have to do some kind of jumps, do that before your lift, right? Do that before you lift. So your ramp protocol would obviously have the heart rate accelerator, but then you would have some sprint mechanics or some change of direction drills and things like that, depending on what your session for the day is going to be, right? It'll prepare you to run and jump before you do all that. And then going in, your structure as far as your training goes, or your weight training goes, would be similar to what I described earlier, with your strength piece, your secondary strength piece, and then your assistance accessory work. And after that, core. And depending on the sport, depending on the performance goal, is how I would write those heart rate accelerators. If you need to gain weight, probably just do one of those. If you need to get into shape, I do both. Yeah, kind of keep it simple, don't want to complicate it too much. And that's just the general flow of how your training should go, right? If you have either injuries or something's nagging and stuff, I would write some prehab work to do in the beginning or some rehab work to do towards the end of your training session with your assistance work. Like for myself, I have a shoulder, ankle, a little bit of a knee issue going on. So before I do any kind of pressing that I know would aggravate, or any kind of movements that would aggravate my shoulder, I do some shoulder work to kind of get those muscles primed and ready to go. For my ankle, I like to make sure that I do ankle stability and strengthening work before I sprint, before I jump, things like that. I think another thing worth mentioning is the idea of accountability and discipline. I think those two concepts are a lot more important, a lot more pivotal in your journey than something like motivation. Think about a gallon of milk. If it says you get it on the January 1st and it expires on January 20th, think of your motivation as on the first day of the month, you jumping out of bed, you ready to go, woo-woo. But then as the training goes on and life's kicking in and the training's kicking your butt, or whatever the case may be, day 1 and day 20 are gonna be completely different. By day 20, you're like, damn, I really don't wanna get up right now. This blanket too comfortable. I don't wanna get out of bed. It's cold outside, it's raining. You're gonna find ways to make excuses. And that's why motivation isn't necessarily as important as things like discipline and accountability. That kind of covers everything I wanted to talk about today. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment, shoot me a DM, whatever it is, and I can try to address those. This is a a platform of information, accountability, and support. So if you have questions, feel free, and I'll try to get a chance to talk about those things in as much depth as possible. Go ahead, like, comment, share, subscribe, all those good things, and I'm gonna catch y'all next time.